Hello and welcome to the in-new series of Drishti IAS. My name is Pooja Dwivedi. Today we are going to discuss something that is unprecedented, protests in China. The political structure of China is such that it denies any sort of freedom of expression. So just think about the scale of protests that are going right now in China, and this is unprecedented. Why am I calling it unprecedented or never seen before? Because, of course, if a country does not have freedom of expression, how can they express dissent over a dictatorial government like Xi Jingping's government? Let us move ahead. And from the perspective of GS Mains Paper Second, it is important to understand this particular topic. Also from the perspective of prelims, a little tad bit is important. Let us move ahead. And first of all, talk about the news. The news is such that the zero COVID policy of Xi Jinping now is backfiring. People are getting unemployed. Many are committing suicide according to certain rumors, if we are to believe those rumors. People are unemployed specifically. Unemployment is very high in the younger section of the population in China. And also the current policy, the zero COVID policy, as well as rampant and frequent COVID tests that are being conducted, the failure of vaccines, these are all the reasons why China is seeing protests. Let us move ahead and talk about all this. So first of all, let us look upon what are the COVID cases in China. Now China recently, if we talk about last Monday, it recorded 40,052 new COVID cases, which is up from Sunday's 39,506 cases. It is also higher than previous peak back in April. Okay, so as you can see, the peak of COVID cases, and you can compare it to 27th of November. 2 days, you can see the peak has risen even much before April. The cause of the spread is the strain Omicron, and worst affected cities have been Guangzhou in the south as well as Chongqing in the southwest. Okay, but protests are widespread not only in these two areas but also in Beijing, in Shanghai, and many other areas. So, as we see the vaccination, there is lower vaccination level in China over the age of 80 years of population, which is much more vulnerable. The elderly are much more vulnerable. So only about half of the people in China aged 80 and over have received their first vaccine I'm talking about. Okay. And then there is less than 60% of those aged 60 to 69 who are fully vaccinated. The information with respect to which two vaccines are working in China right now are Sinovac and Sinopharm. But China has been, given aid and offers to use other vaccines as well, but China is not going to employ that on a large scale. So, large scale, Sinovac and Sinopharm, which I don't think it's working against the Omicron variant. Moving ahead now, the current COVID policy is working, implemented in China, but it is also being called Dynamic Zero. Here, the government takes action whenever COVID flares up in order to curb any sort of infection and hence death. Recently, China also recorded its first death in the recent times, in the last few months. So, it has actually been implemented, this zero COVID policy with much more effort. So, this is the policy of the government in which lockdowns are imposed, and due to that, many issues are arising. So, strict lockdowns, it means China's death toll has stayed low. So, this is one of the reasons why this zero COVID policy is being implemented. Because whenever they are imposing strict lockdowns, then deaths also do not occur. And official figure recently has been just over 5,200 with respect to the number of infection after the imposition of zero COVID policy. So let's see where did the lockdowns occur? In Shenzhen, with a population of 17.5 million, this city has been imposed on lockdown. On this city, imposition of lockdown has been done. And Shenzhen is the technological hub. Then comes Shanghai. It is a city of 26 million population. It's a manufacturing, trade and financial hub. Now these two regions, as they are such a huge employment hub, shutting down these two regions, of course, means unemployment at large scale. So factories and ports being shut for a long period of time has created issues. Apart from that, they also have affected work with foreign companies. Investment is not being done in such companies. Also, China's economy has grown just only by 3.9%. Earlier, the target was 5.5% for the current fiscal year. And unemployment because of that is rising. Property market is also weakening. People are not bullish about the economy of China. It also affecting business and consumers in the rest of the world because supply chain almost Every supply chain begins from China. So a lockdown, for example, at the Foxconn plant in Zhengzhou hit the production of iPhones, causing shortages of it. And then factory closures have also led to fears of shortage of toys ahead of Christmas. Moving ahead now, if we talk about what else has taken place in the chain reaction of it, rumors and reports of suicides and other deaths related to zero COVID policy lockdowns has been revealed. 10 people recently were killed in a building fire in 𝐈𝐀𝐒, and this was said that the factory was in a lockdown since a long period of time, and that caused the fire. So people has blamed the lockdown, but there were instances where officials were saying that you all died in the fire because you could not rescue yourself. And the videos are showing people in a plaza singing China's national anthem with its lyric, "Rise up, those who refuse to be slaves." Alright, so this is what we are talking about. Now, there is a wave of civil disobedience. People are not agreeing to what the government is saying right now. Dozens of protests have been breaking out across many Chinese cities. Now, candlelight vigils and peaceful street protests are occurring. Very importantly, protesters are holding a plain A4 size sheet. We will talk about that as well. Now, many people have pushed over pandemic barriers, clashed with the police, and it has turned violent. They are holding candles, phone light, and blank pieces of paper. Now, this piece of paper, what is this? We will talk about that as well. Now, those protests we discussed were a result of zero COVID policy. But there is a group that is able to identify the larger picture. There is an absence of democracy there. So they are demanding democracy so that they can, participate in the government. And specifically against Xi Jingping, the sentiments are rising, and press freedom as well. So there is also a demand for an end to online censorship so that they can, as you can see, this is the map of China, and in 𝐈𝐀𝐒 to Beijing to Xi'an, Nanjing, Wuhan, Guangzhou, Changsha, Shanghai, Delhi, and Chengdu. These are the regions where large-scale protests are occurring. And crowds have gathered in Shanghai at Middle 𝐈𝐀𝐒 Road. They chanted at their risk, chanted for the Chinese Communist Party and leader Xi Jingping to step down, as we see that centralization of power has occurred in Xi Jingping's hands, and this might be one of the reasons why people are knowing that if one person rules for a longer period of time without any opposition, what can happen to their political structure. Now, a nod, if we talk about the A4 size sheets that people are holding, what is this? This is basically a nod to the denial of free speech and rampant censorship. This is actually what the students are saying, that they are holding white paper in order to show that everything they want to say but cannot say. Such a beautiful way. Now, it began with one student holding a single sheet near the campus canteen at a Beijing university. The person was, taken away, but sooner and later on, many students joined that student in order to show solidarity. So, what is happening to the protesters? Police have detained unknown number of protesters. It also includes a foreign journalist. And a Shanghai-based cameraman, Edward Lawrence, was detained and beaten before being released. And this is a problem because the police are saying that they have only detained him, and they detained him because they wanted his safety so that he might not get into the clutches of COVID-19. Crackdown on student rallies which occurred in Beijing's Tiananmen Square in 1989. Since then, these kind of protests were, not being seen in China. But now the scale, the scope and the extent and expanse of this particular protest is very large, because it is very synchronized in terms of scope and size. It's working very synchronously. It's not something that people are doing not in coordination. And because they have shared issues, the issues as a community that they are sharing, they're voicing their concerns for that, such as lockdowns, anxieties about jobs and businesses, various forms of frustrations with medical care, as well as the deaths that are occurring. Now, the problem is that right now the government is not going to have any other plan, just having a stringent zero COVID policy, because there are no other plans in place. Although the government, looking at the protests right now, has actually lightened some curbs, but still we cannot see an end to this policy. There are concerns about the efficacy of China's domestically produced vaccines, why they are not working, why people are not being encouraged to take vaccines, to have it. Also, there is a problem if we see the current, condition of China. There are so many issues with the infection. If it rises, then healthcare sector will also become overstretched because there is an issue with the kind of healthcare equality that they have in China. It's unequal, and also it will be people will pay heavy consequences for those who are being identified as protesters because there is no freedom of speech and expression. State media also has been silent on the protest. They are just taking sides with the police and the government. What are the lessons from this for India? First of all, India's vaccines have yet again proven themselves to be effective. Secondly, India should understand that looking at the condition of China, it should ensure that it should not put all its eggs in one basket. It should try to diversify its supply chains where it is getting its equipment and raw materials from. And also, now the problem will be, it might be possible that China starts again becoming tenaciously aggressive because in order to show that Xi Jingping's legitimacy as well as need for this particular country like China, they will of course tend to demonize India, saying that India is tenacious and it wants to get into their territory. That is why Xi Jinping's stay in China as the leader is important. So that also India needs to learn that it wants to enhance its border vigilantism. Also, right now China is embroiled in its own issues. Here India can fill the gap with respect to its relations with South and Southeast Asia. Also, India, by showing its, you can say, association with democratically minded country, can show why democracy is an important political structure in the world. Alright, so I hope you understood what I tried to make you understand over here. Just from the political point of view, I will attach a mains based question in the comment segment. You can answer it. Okay, thank you so much for watching and stay updated.